Hey y'all, and welcome back to Flick Connection, where in less time than you normally spend scrolling for something to watch every night, I'm going to tell you about 10 of the most messed up movies you can currently catch on Max. But don't worry if you don't subscribe to Max, because down in the top pinned comment, I've listed all the movies we're discussing, but I've also put the other streaming services currently hosting them here in the US and in other countries around the world. And Max has always been home to some messed up movies. They still have Man Bites Dog, one of the most messed up movies ever made. Naked Lunch, one of the weirdest and most off-putting movies I think I've ever seen. The original Funny Games. They even have Under the Skin with Scarlett Johansson, just to name a few. But in this list, we're going to talk about some that have maybe been overlooked that were just recently added, starting with my number 10 pick, Greta. In this movie, Chloe Grace Moretz actually plays a young woman who befriends this much older widow, yet this woman has some really twisted ideas in her head, and the movie is a fairly slow burn, but it's from the same director as The Crying Game, and it's actually filled with a bunch of twists and turns, and is a twisted movie. She's great in the movie, but Isabella Huppert, who kind of plays the villain here, she's actually really wild. She's played a bunch of great roles over the years, and this is definitely one of them. My number 9 pick gets some big points for being a pretty scary alien invasion movie with Dark Skies. Now, this is one that actually did fairly well when it was released in theaters years back, but has kind of been forgotten with time, and alien invasion is a scary thing. I mean, I do like big budget action movies with plenty of shooting and alien guts. You don't get any of that in this movie. Rather, you focus on a small family who begin experiencing these really traumatic events. Events that you've likely heard of in UFO documentaries, things like that, yet they're all sort of heightened up in this horror movie style. And it is a traditional horror movie style. This is kind of a by-the-book thing with twists and turns, but the really dark, creepy nature of this alien movie is kind of unique and I think totally appropriate for the subject matter. Now, I said these were messed up movies. I didn't say they were all dark and twisted. Most of them are, but my next pick is Robert Rodriguez's Machete. Been a big fan of Danny Trejo in everything when he's doing supporting roles or leading roles like this, and Machete is easily like his grandest role ever. It's just wild, over the top in every conceivable way, and for being such a silly, over the top, kind of campy movie, it has got a stacked cast. There are a bunch of killers in this movie, and say what you will about Steven Seagal, but he's hilarious with a few scenes he has in this movie. I consider it to be fairly rewatchable if you haven't seen it in a while, but one of the only movies on this list of messed up movies that is just packed with laughs.
Who are you? The new gardener.
Now, my number 7 pick is one that pissed a lot of people off. And unfortunately, it was for the wrong reasons, yet I still think this is a really good movie. It was just marketed all wrong. It Comes at Night is about something that does come at night, but I think the title alone, aside from the marketing, implies that there's some sort of monster or something in this movie, and there is not. Rather, what you get are some people trying to survive in some sort of post-apocalyptic world. It's very unclear. They're out in the woods, and you don't get a good sense for what condition the rest of the world is in, mainly because the people in the story don't really know either. Rather, they're having to contend with a lot of mystery and speculation while also having to get along with each other and survive. So there is something that comes at night. It's just not what people expect, and it makes for a really intriguing, thought-provoking, albeit creepy, art film. Yet, if you were looking for something more traditional like Dark Skies, I can understand why you would be disappointed. However, It Comes at Night is really well directed, builds up tension incredibly well, especially considering there's not a whole lot happening on screen from scene to scene in this movie. It still captivated me from beginning to end. I've got another one though that's a little bit light. In fact, it's the lightest one on this list of messed up movies, meaning it's The most accessible, will appeal to the broadest audience, yet it still does have some messed up moments in Lawless. Now, this is a Prohibition-era story, and it's actually directed by John Hillcoat, who's more famous for movies like The Proposition and The Road. And while Lawless does kind of fit in with his other movies, I find it to be less grim than either of those other two. The cast is not only amazing on paper in this movie, but everyone's doing really great work. They're all playing interesting characters. Guy Pearce especially. And Tom Hardy's great. And then the movie is kind of Shia LaBeouf's movie. It's kind of his story if there is a main character. So if you got any sort of interest in a Prohibition-era movie like this with moonshine runners, then Lawless is maybe not the top of the heap, but I would say it's up there. But before talking about my top 5 movies on this list, if you've had your eye on this St. Nicholas shirt, it's available for a little bit longer in my store at darrenvandam.com/shop. I'll put a link in the description, but it's pretty easy to find. We've got a bunch of designs over there to choose from. My wife and I designed all of these together and had a blast doing it, but we also sampled a bunch of different shirt materials, and I settled on these insanely soft 100% cotton black shirts. They get softer the more I wash them, and they're fitted. They fit really nice. So go check out the shop, and while you're there, maybe sign up for the free newsletter. We only send out 1 or 2 per month, and it's always additional movie recommendations, sometimes new releases that I don't mention here on the channel. And while you're there, you can check out a bunch of the designs we've got over there on these super soft shirts. But let's move on with the top 5 movies on this list. Very few movies blend horror and comedy the way my next pick does, Eli Roth's Cabin Fever. Now that's the 2002 original from Eli Roth, not the pointless 2016 remake. If you've never seen this movie, it's about a group of young folks that go out and spend a weekend in a cabin where they begin to develop symptoms of a flesh-eating disease, and it turns into some wild, gory stuff, but also has kind of a weird vibe to it that people just love. Now, this isn't a very well-reviewed movie, but it's a fairly well-respected one, and it's kind of the reason Eli Roth has such an amazing career and has made so many weird movies with so many famous people because of this one and a couple of others. But Cabin Fever is so unique unto itself, it kind of makes it highly rewatchable, and I watch a lot of movies like this and have yet to find anything with quite the magic or tone of Cabin Fever. That said, I have yet to see Eli Roth's Thanksgiving, but odds are I'm not going to enjoy anything as much as Cabin Fever. My next movie is an American remake of a classic horror movie, which tends to fail. Those tend to not do very well when they Americanize these overseas horror movies. They somehow lose their magic. However, my next pick didn't add anything, but happened to nail remaking a Spanish language movie in English perfectly with Quarantine. Now, this is a remake of a movie titled Rec for Record, and there's actually a whole series of those, and I like all of them. They're not all masterpieces, but the first one is exceptional, and Quarantine, the American remake, is almost a frame-by-frame remake, just done with American actors, which kind of seems pointless, and it is if you're not allergic to subtitles. But if you don't watch movies with subtitles, you can essentially still watch this amazing, wild, over-the-top zombie outbreak movie that's just told from a very different perspective, and is actually designed in a way that could, if you let it, scare the absolute shit out of you. I mean, it is a wild movie that really just kind of doesn't step off the gas, especially in the second half of the movie. For those of you that don't mind subtitles, I still recommend Quarantine as much as Rec, because they're pretty damn equal in terms of the final product, but still kind of just a creepy funhouse of a movie. All right, and then that's it for the real, like, traditional horror movies. Now, 2 of my other picks on this list have some horror elements, but you wouldn't really call them full-blown horror movies. But my next pick is a really cool one starring Rutger Hauer from the 80s, The Hitcher. This movie also had a remake, I believe, with Sean Bean. I remember it being kind of okay, but the original from 1986 is a totally badass 80s movie. Rutger Hauer plays a hitchhiker who just likes murdering people, you know, typical stuff. And when one of his victims escapes, he just keeps hunting him down. Kind of like the movie Joyride. It's a road movie, they're out in the desert, it's cat and mouse stuff. A little scary, but also kind of an action movie at times because of the car chases and some explosions. But it is just classic Rutger Hauer stuff. If you've never seen this one and you generally like my recommendations, watch it. It's a totally badass flick. But if you have, and maybe it's been a long time, I can tell you, the Hitcher still holds up today really well. And they've also just recently added one of Stanley Kubrick's most famous movies. They have a bunch of Kubrick stuff over on Max, actually. But in this video, we're talking about Dr. Strangelove. Or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. Never been a fan of that type of title structure, but the movie itself is shocking how well the satire holds up today. I say holds up, it's still relevant today. Shockingly so. It's 6 decades old here in 2024, and we're still worrying about the same stuff that they were worried about in this movie. And at this point in Kubrick's career, he really started kind of critiquing the world as he saw it. And Dr. Strangelove kind of shows us how close we are to the brink of nuclear holocaust. We're potentially one insane general or hothead move away from just complete annihilation. Or at least that is on the table and not just in this movie. The movie just shows you how razor close we actually are to something like this. The scenes are all really funny. The characters' interactions with each other are hilarious, yet that main point, like a knife, cuts through all of that humor at the same time, and it's really kind of a unique, sharp viewing experience if you've never seen it. And if you have, rewatch it and just really kind of lean into this one. It's a wild one, especially considering how, again, disturbingly relevant it is today. And then my number one pick, another movie just recently added to Max, easily one of the most messed up movies of all time, and the only collaboration between Oliver Stone and Quentin Tarantino with Natural Born Killers. Now, I say collaboration because there's no doubt in my mind Tarantino had a hand in the way that this movie was made, even if it was just in how detailed he was in his script. But I have a feeling there was a little bit more to it than that, because Natural Born Killers feels so different from any other Oliver Stone movie. It's fast-paced, bombastic, it's cut together really fast, something he's done in a lot of movies, but there's more to it. There's this bizarre, satirical, comical edge to this really disturbing movie that feels very Tarantino. And yes, it's in the dialogue, but also just in how wild some of these characters are. I mean, Tommy Lee Jones is a maniac in this movie. Robert Downey Jr.'s character is wild. Tom Sizemore as Scagnetti. Rodney Dangerfield as his abusive father. I mean, all sorts of clever, creative, weird stuff that just feels different from Oliver Stone. It feels like Tarantino, man, edited in the way of an Oliver Stone movie, and I love this movie for that. Despite the fact that it's got some really twisted, dark elements, it is still such a wild ride, and just like Dr. Strangelove, it has something to say, and its points kind of cut through all of the chaos in Natural Born Killers. Just a super cool flick with some twisted stuff in it that I absolutely love. If you've never seen it, be warned, it's a very dark movie, but the filmmaking quality of it is just one of the coolest things you could see on Max right now. But don't forget to go check that top pinned comment so that you can find where else you might be able to stream these movies at the time of me posting this. If you don't want to miss the movies before they're gone from these streaming services, then make sure you've clicked that subscribe button and maybe the bell notification so you get notified when I release videos like this, which is something I do once or twice a week, every week, so I can, make sure you never run out of good movies to watch. But that is the list, and I'll keep making these videos as long as y'all keep watching them. Thanks for checking out this special Max episode, and you will see me on the next one.